Hi guys, a little bit of a follow-on from my fitting of the Rally Raid soft pannier racks. So I did a fairly comprehensive video of fitting these, and if you've watched that, I did have a slight problem with the thread on the captive nut on the bike. So nothing to do with Rally Raid. The captive nut, the thread was a bit I don't know whether it was rusty or I certainly have not had it off before, but it looked a little bit rusty at just at the first portion of the thread as you're screwing it in, which meant that with the standard bolt, obviously on the actual foot peg, it's recessed, so it was gripping, no problem at all. But when we fitted this part here, which is just the supporting bracket, so this is the supporting bracket, and then it attaches at these 2 points here. You can't really see it on the video, but if you look at the other video, you'll see there's 2 bolts there. So when this was put back, that thread just the bolt couldn't quite capture the thread. So I went looking for some longer bolts, slightly longer bolts, which actually I found. And so I bought a couple of bolts, and they work fine. I've tried a dry fit of it, no problem. However, I suddenly remembered that, well, there's 2 things. I don't carry a passenger, and in fact, I've insured as a solo rider, so I ain't going to carry any passengers. Which means this becomes a bit redundant, I guess, until it becomes MOT time, in which case you'd have to whack it back on again for the MOT. But with that being redundant, I also remembered something that I'd bought ages ago and never actually fitted to any bike. It was actually, I bought them for a different bike, I think 2 bikes ago, and there were these little tie-down brackets. So the top end is flush to fit to whatever you're going to fit it to, and it allows it to bend, well, to move, you know what I mean. So you can sit it flush and then bring it out to hook to. So having suddenly realised I had these, and suddenly realising I don't really need a rear footrest, I actually thought, well, do we actually need to keep the footrest on? And again, I've had a bit of a dry run with it to see. It works a treat. So obviously no good if you're carrying a passenger, and you would need to refit, I think, for MOT, because it's got a dual seat. I'm not so sure what the regulations are anywhere else in the world, but here I'm pretty sure you'd have to refit them. But to be honest, it's a couple of minutes job to refit. And now that I've got the longer bolts, for me it's not going to be a problem here. I think for anybody else, I don't think it'd be a problem. It's just there was a little bit of corrosion in that captive nut, or on the captive thread. So, and then further to that, I was thinking, right, so with a smaller horsepower bike, you know, weight can be a little bit critical, and I'm trying to keep the weight down on everything. So I suddenly realised that and that, I wonder what the weight is of them 2. So you do what you have to do, and I weighed it. So what we've got is that the grab rail and the footrest weigh in at about, no, not about, they weigh in at 1.45 kilogram. So just under 1.5 kilogram for those 2 parts. The Rally Raid soft pannier rack is 2 kilogram. So it's only 0.5 kilogram more than the grab rail and footrest. 0.5 kilogram. However, there is also this bracket here, but to be honest, I wouldn't think that weighs very much. It's only a small part. So in all, I sort of worked out that even at the most, the Rally Raid fitting without the grab rail and without the footrest is going to be in the region of about 0.75 of a kilogram more. So in other words, taking everything off, 3/4 of a kilogram is the only weight gain for that rack, and it's a hell of a bit of metal. Real substantial piece of steel. Now on the other side, the footrest has a attachment to the exhaust, keeping the exhaust up. So I can't take that one off straight away, but already I've had a look, and I'm going to get at some stage get an engineer, just pop into an engineer's shop. There is a chap that's done a couple of bits for me, and I'll get him to make a bracket that fits through both of these holes, and then in steel supports the exhaust. So that's what I am going to do for the other side, but for now it'll just have to stay on until I get that done. So I'm just going to pop this on and just show you what I'm thinking. These, I'm just going to put them on flush, or parallel I should say, parallel with the support bar, but when I actually get round to using them, I'll see if they're in the right position, and they're very easy to adjust. And these are going to be very handy when I get my new dry bag, which is the horseshoe one from a company called 21 Brothers in Poland. That should be with me in probably the next 3 or 4 weeks. And by the nature of that, will come down here somewhere. This could end up being a really useful tie down point at this part of the bike. But anyway, we'll see how it goes, but I'm going to fit them anyway because I've had them for, well, probably a few years now. So I've put some copper grease, and again, I'm sure everybody knows what copper grease is, but a well used one. But if you don't know what copper grease is, it just stops the surface from, or it dissuades the surface from rusting. It's a rust preventer. It means that you can get bits off again. So I've put some on the back of the bracket. I've also put some on the side of the bracket that's going to fit to the bike. It'll all clean up afterwards when I've got it on, but that should mean it could be on for a few years and then still come off again without any problem, without rusting. So what we're going to do is keep the original bolts. So I can now go back to using the original bolt for the one that was a problem, because there is less space now, so it will, and I've tried it, it will actually screw in. And on that, we've again used the Loctite or lock thread. So that's what I'm using, lock thread. But I guess there's all sorts of different ones. And what I'm going to do is just pop that through there. I've done this as a dry run, but obviously it'll probably all go wrong this time around. And just thread it in by hand. And take the other one. Again, exactly the same. Just thread it in by... Yeah, so that one's in now. So they're both, yeah, they're both in. So they're screwing in up quite freely now. And then I'm just going to nip them up, and we'll see where what we end up with. So again, rather than tighten one up, I'm just going to get them both to a point that they're nipped up, and then we can go into a tightening mode. So that's running parallel. I'm a little bit OCD, whatever it's called, but they may not end up in those positions once I get the bag that I'm going to be using for travelling, and I can easily adjust them to whatever position I want. So now that we've got them just nipped up, I'm going to go into a tightened up now. Right, so they are now tightened up. I'll just get rid of some of this copper grease, otherwise it'll go everywhere forever. Okay, so I'll take there's a little bit more copper grease to come off, but it's easy to come off. It just needs to get in and do that. Goes everywhere. So I'll just bring the camera in a bit closer so you can see. So what we have now is no foot peg. We have the bracket tightened up again. We have the original bolts, which fit nice and tight now. That one did anyway, but that one didn't. So I'm using the original bolts, discarded the footrest, and I've put these little brackets on here to tie down to. And to be honest, for a bit of a last minute sort of eureka moment, I'm really quite happy with that. So we'll just see how it goes. In all honesty, the other side I'll do, but that could take a little while depending on whether I can get sorted out. Lovely night here, isn't it wonderful? Garden's not looking too bad, even though I hate gardening. So, just to show you down here, so on this side, this part will be very easy to do once that's discarded, but I will need to get a bracket made in steel from here, where the fixing is, back to here, and I'll probably get them to make it in a similar shape to this actually, but in black steel, maybe powder coated, and we'll just run a bracket same shape as that but in flat steel to this point here. So that's something that we can watch out for in the future, but as I say, it won't be that quick, that one. Okay guys, so hope that's been of interest, and I've had those little ring brackets for years, so I'll try and find where I'd got them from, but I guess if you do a search you know, on Amazon or not on YouTube, on Amazon or eBay, you'll probably find something similar. But I'm really happy with that. Okay guys,